The lawyer's office smelled like old paper and regret. Claire Abbott sat in the chair farthest from the desk, hands folded in her lap, watching dust motes drift through the afternoon light. 14 months since Garrett died. 14 months of sleeping in her cousin's spare room, feeling like a piece of furniture nobody quite knew where to put. The lawyer, a man named Parsons with a forgettable face and a voice that droned like distant machinery, was reading through the will. Garrett's brother got the small farm in the next county. The brother-in-law got the old truck. The sisters divided the livestock, what little remained after medical bills had eaten through most everything else. Claire waited. She'd learned how to wait during those final weeks at the hospital. Learned how to sit perfectly still while the world made its decisions around her. Learned how to keep breathing when breathing felt like the hardest work there was. Parsons cleared his throat. He was looking at her now, and there was something in his expression that made her spine straighten. Not quite pity, not quite sympathy. Something closer to apology. "To my wife, Claire Abbott Reeves," he read slowly. "I leave the property registered under matricula number 773-421B, located at Hawk Ridge, Stone Creek County, Kentucky, including the structure thereon, and all surrounding land as delineated in the attached survey." Silence filled the room like water filling a well. Garrett's sister, the older one, Margaret, who'd never quite forgiven Garrett for marrying a woman with no family money and no prospects, made a small sound. Almost a laugh. Almost a sigh. The kind of sound that meant, well, that figures. Claire looked down at the paper Parsons slid across the desk. A copy of some official document. All stamps and seals and numbers that meant nothing to her. She'd never heard of Hawk Ridge. In 15 years of marriage, Garrett had never mentioned Stone Creek County. Never pointed to a mountain and said, "That one's mine." The office felt smaller suddenly. The walls closer. The air thicker. "There's something else," Parsons said. He produced an envelope from beneath the will. Plain white paper, business size, with Garrett's handwriting across the front. Just her name. Claire. Not Mrs. Reeves. Not even Claire Abbott. Just the name he'd called her in the dark, in the early mornings, in all the quiet moments when it was only the two of them, and the world hadn't yet made its demands. Her hands weren't quite steady when she took it. "Mr. Reeves instructed me to give you this with the deed," Parsons said. He was very specific about that. Margaret's chair scraped against the floor. "Is that it, then?" "That's everything," Parsons confirmed. The family filed out. Margaret first, then the brother, then the brother-in-law who'd already pocketed the truck keys. None of them looked at Claire. She was used to that. She'd been invisible to them since the funeral, maybe before. Garrett's family had never quite understood what he saw in her. A nurse from the county hospital. Nobody special. Nobody important. No children to carry on the name after Benjamin. She shut that thought down before it could take root. When the office was empty except for herself and Parsons, she opened the envelope. Inside, a hand-drawn map on graph paper. The kind Garrett used to sketch equipment layouts at the machine shop. The lines were precise, measured his engineer's hand evident in every angle. A road, a trail, elevation markers. And at the top, where the paper showed a cluster of trees and rock formations, a single structure marked simply home. Below the map, in the margins, he'd written in pencil, "When you understand this mountain, you won't want to leave." No signature, no explanation. Just that single line in his careful left-handed script. And below that, another note, smaller. The rest is waiting. Trust the silence. Claire sat in the empty office for a long time after Parsons excused himself. The afternoon light shifted across the floor. Somewhere outside, a car started and pulled away, life continuing its forward motion, indifferent to loss. She folded the map carefully, slipped it back into the envelope, put the envelope in her bag next to the deed she didn't understand, and the paperwork that made her owner of a place she'd never seen. When she finally stood, her right knee protested. The old injury from the accident, the one that never quite healed right, the one that made her limp slightly when she was tired or the weather was turning. Garrett used to notice, used to bring her the heating pad without asking, used to know before she said anything that the ache was back. She walked out into the street where the October sun was setting behind the buildings of downtown Stone Creek, a town she'd driven through once or twice but never stopped in, a town that held something of Garrett's she'd never known existed. The air tasted like wood smoke and coming winter. Claire stood on the sidewalk, the envelope pressed against her ribs beneath her jacket, and thought, "What did you leave me, Garrett? What am I supposed to understand?" The mountain didn't answer, but somewhere up there beyond the buildings and the roads and all the familiar shapes of the known world, something was waiting. She could feel it like a weight against her chest, like a promise made to someone who wasn't there to keep it. The dirt road ended at a gate held shut with rusted wire. Claire's cousin Dennis killed the engine of his pickup and sat with both hands still on the wheel, staring up at the mountain like it was something that might bite. "You sure about this?" he asked. It was the third time he'd asked. The first was when she'd told him where she needed to go. The second was at the turnoff from the highway onto the county road. Now at the actual gate, he asked again. Claire didn't answer. She was looking at the trail that wound up through the trees, disappearing into shadow and distance. According to Garrett's map, the cabin was 6 miles up. 6 miles of switchbacks and elevation gain climbing from valley floor to ridgeline. She'd packed light. A backpack with clothes, a sleeping bag, basic supplies, a flashlight, matches, a water bottle. The things Garrett had taught her to carry when they used to hike together, back before Benjamin was born, back when they were still learning each other's silences. Claire. Dennis turned in his seat. He was a good man, fundamentally kind beneath his discomfort with her presence. Nobody's been up there in years. Could be anything. Could be nothing. Could be, "I know. You got that knee. The trail's gonna be rough." "I know." He tried one more time. "You could just sell it. Whatever's up there. Sign the papers, take the money, move on." Claire opened the door. The October morning was cold sharp with the promise of frost. She could see her breath. "Thank you for the ride," she said. Dennis watched her shoulder the pack, test its weight, adjust the straps. He wanted to say something else. She could see it in his face, the way his mouth opened and closed without sound. But what was there to say? She was going up the mountain whether he understood it or not. Finally, he just nodded. "Call when you're ready to come back down." She didn't tell him she had no phone. No service up there anyway, according to the county records. She didn't tell him she didn't know when she'd be ready to come back down. She just lifted a hand, stepped through the gate, Behind her, the truck's engine started again. Gravel crunched under tires. Then the sound faded, swallowed by the vast quiet of the mountain. Claire stood alone at the trailhead and listened. The woods were alive with small sounds. Wind in pine branches. A bird calling from somewhere deep in the canopy. Water running over stone, distant but persistent. The mountain breathing around her. She started walking. The trail was overgrown but still visible. Someone had walked it. Once walked it enough to wear a path into the earth. The someone was Garrett. Had to be. These were his footsteps. She was following literally the ghost of his presence in the packed dirt and the way certain branches had been cut back at shoulder height. The pack settled against her shoulders. Her knee began its familiar protest after the first mile, a dull ache that she'd learned to breathe through. The ground rose steadily, switchback after switchback, gaining elevation, the valley floor dropping away behind her. She stopped twice to rest, to drink, to let her breathing slow. The second time, sitting on a fallen log with the October light slanting through the trees, she noticed the dog. It was standing about 20 yards up the trail. Medium-sized, lean coat the color of turned earth. Its ears were forward, head tilted slightly, studying her with an intelligence that made something in her chest tighten. Not a wild dog. Not quite domestic either. Something in between. They regarded each other across the distance. Claire pulled out the sandwich she'd packed. Cheese and bread, simple. She tore off a piece, set it on a rock halfway between them, then moved back to her log. The dog waited, calculating, measuring her intentions against whatever experience had taught it about humans. Finally, it came forward, quick and efficient, took the bread, retreated to its safe distance. "Okay," Claire said quietly. "Okay." She ate her half of the sandwich, drank more water. The dog sat and watched. When she shouldered her pack and started walking again, the dog followed. Not close, maybe 30 feet behind. But following, deliberate. The trail grew steeper. The trees changed, more oak now, more maple, the leaves gone red and gold with the season. Her knee was really hurting by mile 4. She could feel the old scar tissue pulling the bones grinding slightly wrong. But she kept moving because stopping would make starting again harder. Because somewhere up ahead was whatever Garrett had left for her. Because turning back felt like giving up on a question she hadn't learned how to ask yet. The cabin appeared suddenly the way things do on mountains. One moment there was only trail and trees. The next moment the forest opened into a small clearing ringed with massive boulders. And there it was, smaller than she'd imagined, more weathered. The logs dark with age and moisture. The roof low, the whole structure leaning slightly into the mountain as if the rocks were in the process of slowly absorbing it. Claire stood at the edge of the clearing and stared. The dog had stopped too. It sat at the boundary marked by the largest boulders, as if that line meant something it understood. And she didn't. The cabin door hung crooked on its hinges. One window faced east, small and dirty. Moss grew on the north side of the roof. The whole thing looked like it might collapse if she breathed on it wrong. This was what Garrett left her. This was the inheritance the family had pitied her for receiving. She walked forward slowly. The dog didn't move. The door opened with a groan of rusted metal. Inside darkness that smelled of earth and rot and time, she waited for her eyes to adjust, standing in the doorway with afternoon light at her back. A single room, maybe 12 feet by 12 feet. Wooden floor warped and split. A shelf on one wall. An iron hook on the back wall where a straw hat still hung brittle with age. And in the corner, a pile of old blankets that mice had nested in. Nothing else. No furniture, no stove. No obvious reason why Garrett would own this place, let alone leave it to her with instructions written like prophecy. Claire stepped inside. The floor creaked under her weight. A small window in the east wall let in enough light to see the dust floating thick in the air. She set her pack down, pulled out the flashlight. The walls were rough-hewn logs, chinked with mud that had dried and cracked. The ceiling was barely tall enough for her to stand upright. Everything spoke of age, abandonment, decades of weather and neglect. She swept the flashlight beam slowly around the space. Nothing. Just an empty cabin on a mountain falling apart. Outside, the dog made a sound. Not a bark. Something lower. A rumble of warning. Claire turned. A man stood in the doorway, tall, silver hair cut short. Expensive outdoor clothes, the kind that came from catalogs, not work. He filled the frame, backlit by the afternoon sun, his face in shadow. "Mrs. Reeves, he said. His voice was smooth, practiced. "I didn't expect to find you here so soon." Claire's hand tightened on the flashlight, her only weapon. "Who are you?" "Vincent Harlow." He didn't move from the doorway. "I was a friend of your husband's, a long time ago." The name meant nothing to her, but the way he said friend made her skin prickle. "Garrett never mentioned you." "No." Vincent smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "I imagine he didn't mention a lot of things." He stepped into the cabin. The space shrank around him. "This property," Vincent continued, "has a complicated history. I assume that's why you're here. To understand what you've inherited." Claire moved sideways, keeping space between them. "What do you want? To help?" He spread his hands, palms up, a gesture of openness that felt rehearsed. "This land, it's not what it seems. There are 3 owners, Mrs. Reeves, not one. Your husband owned 1/3. I own 1/3. A man named Owen Steele owns the final third. That's the complication. 3 owners. Garrett had never said. Had never mentioned partners, co-owners, anyone else with a claim. "Why are you here?" she asked again. Vincent looked around the cabin like he was appraising it. "Your husband and I had a disagreement years ago about what to do with this land. There's interest, commercial interest in the mineral rights below the ridge. Your husband refused to sell. Now that he's gone," he turned those cold eyes back to her. "I thought perhaps you might be more reasonable." The word hung in the air like a threat wrapped in politeness. "Get out," Claire said quietly. Vincent didn't move. "You don't understand what you're dealing with." "I understand you're in my cabin without permission." "Your cabin?" He smiled again. "That's the thing, Mrs. Reeves. It's not entirely yours. And the sooner you accept that, the easier this will be for everyone." The dog appeared in the doorway, silent. The hair on its neck stood up in a ridge. Vincent glanced at it, then back at Claire. "Think about what I said. I'll be in touch." He walked out. The dog moved aside just enough to let him pass, then stayed in the doorway watching him go. Claire didn't move until she heard footsteps fading down the trail. Even then, she stood frozen, the flashlight beam shaking slightly in her hand. 3 owners, commercial interest, a disagreement. The words circled in her head like crows. Outside, the dog sat down in the doorway and turned its face toward her. Its eyes caught the last of the daylight, amber and intelligent and completely calm. "You knew," Claire said. "Didn't you? You knew he was coming." The dog blinked once, then settled into a watchful crouch facing outward, guarding the entrance. Claire looked around the empty cabin with new eyes. If Garrett had shared ownership, if there was money involved, if he'd refused to sell and then died suddenly in a car accident that everyone said was just bad luck, bad weather, bad timing, what had he left her? And more importantly, what had he been protecting? She pulled the map from her pack, studied it in the failing light. The cabin was marked clearly, but there were other marks too. Small X's scattered across the ridge, elevation numbers. And on the back wall, she turned the paper over a strange symbol drawn in the margin, like an arrow pointing at nothing, or pointing at something she hadn't found yet. Claire walked to the back wall of the cabin. The logs looked solid. She pressed her palm against them. They felt hollow. The discovery came by accident. Claire was trying to move the old blankets from the corner to make space for her sleeping bag, when her boot caught on a warped floorboard and she stumbled, catching herself against the back wall. The impact was minor, but the sound it made wasn't. A hollow thump, echoey, deep. She froze. Solid logs against solid mountain stone shouldn't sound like that. Shouldn't sound like there was empty space on the other side. She straightened, ran her hands over the wall more carefully. The logs were rough, ancient dark with moisture and time. But in one section about waist height, maybe 3 feet wide, they felt different, slightly smoother. The gaps between them packed with something that wasn't quite mud. Claire pulled the flashlight from her pack again, examined the wall inch by inch. There, the nails. In this one section, the nails weren't rusted the same way. They were cleaner, like they'd been removed and replaced more recently than the rest. Her heart was beating faster now. She went to the shelf, found an old screwdriver someone had left there years ago, came back to the wall, started working the first nail loose. It came out easier than it should have. The second one, too. By the time she'd removed 6 nails, the boards shifted under her hands. Not attached, just fitted together like a door pretending to be a wall. She pulled. The first board came away, then the second. They were connected below, joined by some kind of frame she couldn't see in the dim light. Behind them, darkness. Not the darkness of solid rock, the darkness of empty space. Claire grabbed the flashlight, shined it into the opening. A cave, cut into the mountain stone. Maybe 5 feet deep, 3 feet wide. The walls natural granite, but the floor had been leveled, smoothed, made flat by someone with tools and time. And inside the cave, objects, waiting. Her hands shook slightly as she removed the rest of the boards, made the opening large enough to climb through. The air that came from inside was dry, impossibly dry compared to the damp rot of the cabin, like someone had sealed it carefully, preserved it. Claire crawled in. The space was just tall enough to crouch. She swept the flashlight beam slowly across what Garrett had hidden here. In the far corner, a metal box. Old ammunition case, waterproofed. The kind hunters used to store things they wanted to keep safe from weather. Next to it, secured to the wall with thick cord, 3 photographs, faded but protected by some kind of coating, and on the opposite side, wrapped in canvas cloth tools. She could see the handles, wood and bone and steel. Claire sat back on her heels. Her breath was loud in the small space. This was what Garrett had left, not the cabin. This. She reached for the photographs first. The first one showed 3 young men standing in front of a pile of rocks. She recognized the boulders outside. They were in their 20s, maybe. T-shirts and work jeans, arms around each other's shoulders, squinting into bright sunlight. The man in the middle was Garrett. Younger than she'd ever known him, his face unlined, his smile wide and uncomplicated. The man on the left was taller, confident, shoulders back. Everything about his posture said he was used to taking up space. The man on the right was smaller, hunched slightly, looking at the camera like he wasn't sure he should be in the picture. Claire turned the photo over. Garrett's handwriting faded but legible. Vincent. Me. Owen. Hawk Ridge. March 1989. Vincent Harlow. The man who'd been in the cabin an hour ago. 35 years younger but unmistakable. And Owen Steele. The third owner. The second photograph was just Garrett, sitting on a log tin cup in his hands, staring at something beyond the camera's frame. His expression was the one she recognized, the one he wore when he was thinking hard about something he didn't want to talk about yet. The third photograph made her breath stop. It was her, but from behind. Standing on a dirt road, her shoulders curved forward, her head tilted slightly to the right. The way she stood when she was processing something difficult. The way she'd stood at Benjamin's funeral. The way she'd stood in the hospital the day the doctors said there was nothing more they could do. She didn't know this photo existed. Had no memory of Garrett taking it. Had no idea he'd kept it all these years in a cave on a mountain she didn't know he owned. Claire's hands weren't steady anymore. She set the photos down carefully, opened the metal box. Inside gold coins. 23 of them. She counted twice to be sure. American Eagles Krugerrands. Old rural gold. The kind farmers bought before banks, before digital accounts, before the world became paperwork and passwords. Not a fortune, but enough. Enough to live on for a few years if she was careful. Below the coins, folded papers. She lifted them out. The first was a registry document. Official seal signatures dated 1992. Property registration for Hawk Ridge, Stone Creek County. 3 names listed as co-owners. Garrett Reeves, Vincent Harlow, Owen Steele. Each with equal shares. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. The second document was a letter from a lawyer, dated 4 years ago, explaining in careful legal language that the sale of the entire property required unanimous consent from all 3 owners. that the refusal of one constituted a valid legal block. The third paper was a journal, small pocket-sized black cover, worn soft with handling. Claire's fingers traced Garrett's name on the inside cover. She opened to the first page. March 1989. Found it today. Me, Vincent Owen. 6 miles up from the valley ridge running east to west. Nobody's land, nobody's claim. We walked every inch, made our plan. This is where we build it. Our place. When the world gets too loud. She turned pages. Years of entries, sporadic but steady. Notes about water sources, where the soil ran deep. Which months the ridge flooded. How to find the second spring when the first one ran low. And between the practical notes, other things. June 1995. Vincent's changing. Talks about money more than mountains now. Owen sees it too. Worries me. October 2005. They came today. Mining company. Want the land. Vincent brought them without asking me or Owen first. Says it's opportunity. I said it's betrayal. He says I'm stuck in the past. Maybe I am. But a promise is a promise. January 2007. Vincent won't let it go. Pressure on Owen now. Owen's scared of him. Always has been. Owen almost signed. I stopped it. Vincent called me an obstacle. I called him a coward who forgot what we swore. We're not brothers anymore. We're strangers who share paper. April 2010. Making preparations. If something happens to me, if Vincent does what I think he might do, Claire will need this, all of it. She doesn't know that yet. But she will. She's stronger than she sees. Stronger than I ever was. Claire's vision blurred. She blinked hard, kept reading. The last entry was dated August 2011. Registered everything. Split 3 ways, legally protected. Owen has his third. Vincent has his. Mine goes to Claire when I die. She'll understand why when the time comes. She'll know what to do. Not because I told her. Because she's the kind of person who knows what's right. Even when it's hard. Trust that. Trust her. The journal trembled in her hands. Garrett hadn't left her a broken cabin on a worthless mountain. He'd left her a third of something valuable enough to kill for. He'd left her proof of ownership when someone would try to take it. He'd left her everything she needed to fight. The journal had more. Pages and pages of entries spanning 15 years. A manual for survival on the ridge. A record of disputes. A timeline of Vincent's attempts to force a sale. And on the very last page, written in different ink, Recent Claire. If you're reading this, I'm gone. The third is yours now. Vincent will come. He's not the friend we used to be. He only sees money. Owen is afraid of him, always was. But you're not afraid. You don't quit when things are hard. You didn't quit on Benjamin, even when the doctors said. You didn't quit on me when the end came. Don't quit on this. It's worth protecting. Not the land. The promise we made. 3 boys who swore they'd never let greed take what meant more than profit. I kept that promise. Now it's yours to keep. I left you enough to fight. Fight Claire. Please. Her breath caught in her throat. She had to close her eyes, had to sit in the darkness of the cave with the journal pressed against her chest, while something enormous and terrible and loving crashed through her. He'd known. Garrett had known he was going to die, or had known it was possible, had prepared for it like he prepared for everything carefully, thoroughly, leaving nothing to chance. The accident that killed him. Everyone said it was just bad luck. Ice on a mountain road. Brakes that failed at the worst moment. But what if it wasn't luck? What if Vincent? She opened her eyes, forced herself to breathe evenly, the tools wrapped in canvas. She unwrapped them carefully. A hammer, a chisel, a hunting knife with a bone handle. All of them worn from use. All of them Garrett's. She recognized the knife. He used to carry it when they went hiking. Used to show her how to use it safely. Used to say, "You never know what you'll need. Better to have it." Now she had it. The cave walls pressed close around her. The mountain stone cold and ancient and patient. Outside, through the gap where the boards had been, she could hear wind in the trees. Water running somewhere distant. The dog moving around near the entrance. Claire gathered everything carefully. The coins back in the box. The photos. The journal. The tools. The papers proving ownership. Proving three-way division. Proving that any sale required unanimous consent. She crawled back out into the cabin. The sun was setting. Orange light streamed through the single window, turning the dust golden. She stood in the middle of the room with her hands full of Garrett's secrets and looked around with new understanding. This wasn't an abandoned cabin. This was a fortress, a cache, a time capsule of proof and preparation. This was her husband's last act of love disguised as inheritance. The dog appeared in the doorway. It had something in its mouth, a stick. It dropped it at her feet, then sat watching her with those amber eyes. "He left you too, didn't he?" Claire said quietly. "Somebody's dog. Somebody who knew this place. Knew to wait." The dog's tail moved once. A single thump against the wooden floor. Claire set everything down carefully. Went to her pack. Found the rest of her food. Pulled out a package of jerky. She opened it, fed pieces to the dog one at a time. Watched it eat with careful efficiency. "Tracker," she said, testing the name. It felt right. "That work for you?" The dog looked at her, seemed to consider, then settled into a lying position at her feet. Outside, the light was fading fast, the mountain growing dark, the valley below disappearing into shadow. Claire lit the camping lantern from her pack. The warm glow filled the cabin, made it feel less like a ruin and more like a shelter. She sat with her back against the wall, the real wall, solid logs and stone, and opened the journal again. Started reading from the beginning, learning her husband's voice in sentences he'd written decades before she met him, learning the history of this place, this promise, this slow betrayal of brotherhood turned to business, learning that the man who'd stood in this doorway hours ago threatening her had once been someone Garrett called friend, and learning that somewhere in Georgia, a man named Owen Steele held the final third of this land. A man Garrett described as scared, weak-willed, but not bad, just afraid. The journal was dense with details, dates, conversations, records of Vincent's pressure tactics, his arguments, his slow escalation from persuasion to threat. Claire read until her eyes burned, until the lantern fuel ran low, until she had the shape of it. The whole story Garrett couldn't tell her while he was alive, because telling it would have put her in danger. 3 young men finding hope on a mountain, a promise made in brotherhood, decades of keeping that promise while the world changed around it. And finally, inevitably, one man breaking, one man staying afraid, one man dying. She closed the journal as the lantern guttered. Tracker was asleep by the door, his breathing slow and even. The mountain was silent around them. Claire pulled her sleeping bag from her pack, laid it out on the cleanest section of floor, crawled inside fully clothed against the October cold. She stared up at the dark ceiling and thought about the map still in her pack. The X marks Garrett had made, the symbol on the back that pointed to this cave. He'd prepared everything, even the dog, especially the dog. An animal that knew the mountain knew to wait, knew to warn her when Vincent came. How long had Tracker been here? How long had he been surviving, watching, waiting for someone to find what Garrett had hidden? She didn't know, but she knew what she had to do tomorrow. Find Eleanor Hayes at the county registry office, verify the documents, understand the legal standing. Find Nathan Brewster, the lawyer whose name was on the letter about unanimous consent, and eventually find Owen Steele in Ashford, Georgia. The third owner, the afraid one, the one Vincent had pressured, the one who might be her only ally in what was coming. Because something was coming. Claire could feel it in the way Vincent had looked at her, in the cold calculation behind his reasonable words, in the fact that Garrett had hidden gold coins and legal documents in a cave and written her instructions that read like warnings. Outside, the wind picked up. It moved through the pines with a sound like distant ocean. Claire closed her eyes. Tomorrow she would begin to understand what Garrett meant when he wrote, "When you understand this mountain, you won't want to leave." Tonight she just needed to survive the dark, survive the cold, survive the weight of knowing that the inheritance wasn't a cabin. It was a choice. Fight or surrender. Keep the promise or break it. Stand where Garrett had stood or walk away from everything he'd protected. She thought about Benjamin, 6 years old. Meningitis that came on so fast the doctors couldn't stop it. 3 days from fever to funeral. 3 days that destroyed her understanding of fairness and safety and the basic promise that if you loved something hard enough, it would stay. She thought about Garrett. 15 years of marriage. Quiet man. Steady hands. The kind of person who fixed things instead of talking about them. Who showed love through preparation. Through making sure she had what she needed before she knew she needed it. He'd done it one last time. Left her gold and proof and truth. Left her Tracker. Left her this choice. In the darkness, Claire's hand found the journal where she'd set it beside the sleeping bag. Her fingers traced the worn cover. "I'll fight," she whispered to the empty cabin, to the mountain, to the ghost of the man who'd trusted her with his last battle. "I don't know how yet, but I'll fight." The wind answered, and somewhere in the dark, Tracker's ear twitched at the sound of her voice, making a promise to someone who wasn't there to hear it. But the promise was made anyway. That was what mattered. That was what Garrett had understood about her all along. She didn't quit when things were hard. She kept going. Even when keeping going looked like sleeping on a dirty floor in a falling down cabin on a mountain, she didn't understand yet. Even when keeping going meant learning to fight battles she'd never trained for. Even when keeping going was the hardest thing, especially then, Claire closed her eyes and let the darkness take her. The mountain kept watch. The county registry office sat on a side street in Stone Creek, a brick building that had probably been elegant in 1920 and was now just old. The kind of place where time moved differently, where filing systems still used paper, and people still wrote things down in ledgers. Claire pushed through the glass door just after 9 in the morning. Her knee ached from the hike down the mountain in the dark, but she needed to move, needed to act, while Vincent's threat was still fresh in her mind. The woman behind the counter looked up from her work, 70, maybe older. White hair cut efficient and short. Reading glasses on a beaded chain. The nameplate on her desk said, Eleanor Hayes County Clerk. Help you. Her voice was neutral, professional. The voice of someone who'd seen every kind of person come through that door and had learned not to make assumptions. I need to verify a property registration, Claire said. Hawk Ridge, Matricula 773-421B. Something shifted in Eleanor's face. Not quite recognition, not quite concern. Something more careful. Name Claire Reeves. I inherited it from my husband, Garrett Reeves. Eleanor set down her pen with deliberate precision. Wait here. She disappeared into the back. Claire could hear filing cabinets opening, the rustle of old paper, footsteps moving with purpose through unseen rooms. When Eleanor returned, she carried a leather-bound ledger and something else, a sealed envelope yellowed with age. She set the ledger on the counter between them, opened it to a marked page. Hawk Ridge Property, Eleanor said. Registered 1992. 3 co-owners. Garrett Reeves, Vincent Harlow, Owen Steele. 1/3 share each. No changes to the registry since initial filing. Claire's stomach tightened. No changes. None. Eleanor's eyes were sharp behind her glasses. Someone tried 8 months ago. Brought paperwork claiming Owen Steele had sold his 1/3. I refused to register it. Why? Irregularities. The signature wasn't properly notarized. The transfer clause contradicted the original registration terms, and she paused. I've been doing this work for 40 years, Mrs. Reeves. I know what fraud looks like. The envelope sat between them. Old, sealed with wax and tape. Claire's name written on the front in Garrett's handwriting. Eleanor pushed it toward her. Your husband brought this 6 years ago. Told me to hold it. Said to give it to his wife to use specifically if he died. I don't usually take on that kind of responsibility, but Garrett... She stopped. Started again. He was a good man. I could see he was afraid of something, so I kept it. Claire's hands shook slightly as she picked up the envelope. The wax seal was still intact. The tape yellowed but holding. Thank you, she managed. Eleanor nodded once. There's a room in back, private. You can read it there. The room was small. A desk, a chair, One window looking out onto an alley where someone had planted roses that were dying in their beds. Claire sat, broke the seal, pulled out 3 folded pages covered in Garrett's careful handwriting. The date at the top was April 2018, 6 months after Benjamin died. 6 months into the worst grief either of them had known. Claire, if you're reading this, I'm dead. I'm sorry. I wanted more time with you. More years. More quiet mornings and difficult conversations and all the ordinary days we were supposed to have. But if I'm gone and you're reading this, it means the worst happened, and I couldn't stop it. I need to explain something I never told you. About Hawk Ridge. About Vincent and Owen. About why I kept this secret. In 1989, 3 of us found that mountain. We were young, stupid, full of plans we didn't understand yet. Vincent was the oldest, the leader. Owen was the youngest, scared of his own shadow but loyal. And me, I was the one in the middle, the one who thought we could build something that mattered. We found that ridge empty, wild, nobody's claim. Took us 2 years to scrape together enough money to file the paperwork. But we did it. Registered it legal. 3 names. 3 shares. Equal. We had a dream. Build a small place up there. Nothing fancy. Just somewhere we could go when the world got too loud. Somewhere that was ours. For years it was fine. We'd go up sometimes, work on the cabin, talk about what we'd do eventually. It was the promise that mattered, not the reality. Then 2005, the mining company came, wanted to buy the land, mineral rights underneath. Vincent saw dollar signs, big ones. He brought them to the mountain without asking me or Owen first. Showed them around like he owned the whole thing. Owen was scared. He's always been scared of Vincent. Something from when they were younger, I never got the full story. Vincent knows how to use that fear. Vincent pushed hard for the sale. Argued it was smart business. Said we were fools to hold on to dreams when we could have money. I said no. The land wasn't about money. It was about the promise we made. You don't sell promises. Vincent didn't take that well. Things got ugly, Claire. He made threats. Never direct enough to prove. But threats. About what would happen if I kept blocking the sale. About accidents that could happen. About families that could get hurt. I documented everything I could. The journal you found in the cave, that's my record. Dates, conversations, witnesses when there were any. In 2010, I updated my will. Made sure my third would go to you if something happened to me. Not because I wanted to burden you, but because I trusted you. You're the strongest person I know. You don't see it. But I've watched you. Watched how you handle impossible things. How you kept breathing after we lost Benjamin, when I couldn't figure out how to breathe at all. How you showed up every day and did what needed doing even when doing it felt unbearable. That strength, that's what this needs. Vincent won't stop. The company's still interested. Maybe more interested now with rare earth prices what they are. He'll come to you with offers, with pressure, with whatever leverage he thinks will work. Here's what you need to know. The sale requires all 3 signatures. Mine, Vincent's, Owen's. He can't sell without unanimous consent. That's in the original registration. and Eleanor Hayes won't let anyone change it without proper cause. Owen signed something 2 years ago, a promise to sell, but it was never registered properly. I made sure of that. Called in favors. Made sure Eleanor knew to look for irregularities. So, on paper, the land is still split 3 ways. Your third, Vincent's third, Owen's third. Owen's the weak point. He's not bad, Claire. Just afraid. Broke. Vincent has something on him. I don't know what. But he uses it. If you can find Owen, talk to him. Show him this letter. Show him the journal. Make him understand that Vincent's been lying about how far the sale actually got. Owen thinks it's done. Thinks he just needs one more signature yours, and he'll get paid. He doesn't know Vincent never finished registering his sale. Never could, because the paperwork was fraudulent. There's proof in the cave, documents. The coins are yours. I saved them for emergencies. This is an emergency. There's also a lawyer, Nathan Brewster in Knoxville. He helped me understand the legal protections. He knows the situation. You can trust him. And Claire, there's one more thing. My accident last year. The one where the brakes failed on the mountain road. Everyone said it was chance. Ice. Bad luck. I don't think it was chance. 2 weeks before Vincent came to the house when you were at work. Told me if I didn't sign, he'd make sure I regretted it. Said accidents happen all the time to stubborn people. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you afraid. Didn't want you looking over your shoulder. But if you're reading this, it means maybe Vincent made good on that threat. I can't prove it. I just know what I know. Be careful, Claire. He's not the man we used to know. He's something else now. Something that sees people as obstacles or assets. Nothing in between. But don't be so careful you give up. Keep the land. Keep the promise. Not for me. For the idea that some things matter more than profit. That brotherhood used to mean something. That 3 boys once stood on a mountain and swore they'd protect something worth protecting. I trust you to know what that means. I love you. I love Benjamin. I loved every single ordinary day we had together. And every hard one, too. If there's anything after this, I'll be waiting. But until then, fight Claire. You're stronger than you know. Garrett. The letter blurred. Claire's throat burned. She couldn't breathe right. Couldn't make her lungs work properly. He'd known. 6 years ago, Garrett had known Vincent might kill him. Had prepared for it. Had written this letter and sealed it and given it to Eleanor Hayes with instructions. Had lived 6 more years knowing that threat was hanging over him. And hadn't told her. Because he didn't want her afraid. Claire folded the letter with shaking hands. Put it back in the envelope. Sat in the small room with the dying roses outside. And let herself feel the full weight of what loving Garrett had meant. What it still meant. When she could stand without her legs giving out, she went back to the main office. Eleanor was waiting. Didn't ask if she was okay. Just handed her a folder. Certified copies of the registration, Eleanor said. Current ownership status, and documentation of the rejected transfer attempt. You'll need these. Thank you. Mrs. Reeves. Eleanor's voice stopped her at the door. Your husband was right to trust you. I can see that now. Claire nodded once. Couldn't speak. Outside, the October morning was bright and cold. The kind of day Garrett used to love. Clear enough to see all the way to the ridgeline. She stood on the sidewalk and looked east toward Hawk Ridge. Miles away. Invisible from here. But knowing it was there changed the shape of the horizon. Her phone she'd bought a cheap prepaid. Charged it at Dennis's house showed 1 bar of service. She dialed the number from the legal letter in the cave. Nathan Brewster answered on the 3rd ring. The bus to Ashford, Georgia left from a terminal 30 miles south of Stone Creek. Claire caught a ride with a woman named Ruth Porter, who sold vegetables at the farmer's market, and didn't ask questions when Claire said she needed to get to the interstate. The bus was half empty. Smelled like diesel and old upholstery in the particular loneliness of long-distance travel. Claire sat by a window and watched Kentucky turn into Tennessee, turn into Georgia. The landscape shifted, mountains softening into hills, pine forests thickening. She'd called Nathan Brewster from a payphone at the terminal, explained who she was, what she'd found. He'd listened without interrupting, then said 3 words that made something in her chest unclench. You have standing, legal standing, the right to fight. He'd explained it carefully. The 3-way ownership was documented. The sale required unanimous consent that was in the original filing. Vincent couldn't force anything as long as one owner refused. But Owen was the variable. If Vincent had convinced Owen the sale was already complete, if Owen thought he just needed Claire's signature to get paid, then Vincent could use that leverage. Find Owen, Nathan had said. Show him the truth. Then we'll have 2/3 solidarity. Vincent becomes the minority. Now she was on a bus to Ashford with a folder full of documents and Garrett's letter folded in her jacket pocket. The journal she'd left hidden in the cave, too precious to risk losing. But she'd photographed the relevant pages with her phone. Evidence, if she needed it. The bus stopped 4 times. Small towns that looked identical. Gas stations and fast food and people getting on and off with the exhausted faces of those for whom travel was necessity, not choice. Claire dozed, woke, watched the sun arc across the sky. Ashford appeared as the afternoon was fading. A medium-sized town, agriculture and light industry. The kind of place people ended up rather than chose. She got off at the main terminal, found the county records office before it closed, gave them Owen Steele's name. The clerk, young bored, more interested in her phone, pulled up the information without curiosity. Benedict Steele. Got a property registered. Rural address. She copied it onto a scrap of paper. No phone listed. You'll need to drive out there. Claire took a taxi. The driver was an old man who talked about the weather and didn't ask why she wanted to go 20 miles into farmland. The address was a small farm at the end of a dirt road. Maybe 40 acres. Well-maintained. A house with white siding and a front porch where wind chimes made hollow music. She paid the driver. Watched him turn around and leave. Stood alone at the gate while dogs barked from somewhere behind the house. A man appeared on the porch, tall, 70 maybe, lean in the way of people who'd worked with their bodies all their lives. Help you, he called. I'm looking for Owen Steele. I'm Claire Reeves. I was married to Garrett Reeves. It's about Hawk Ridge. The man's posture changed. Not quite defensive, but cautious. Wait there. He disappeared inside. Claire could hear voices, low conversation. The dogs had stopped barking. When the door opened again, two men came out. The older one she'd already seen. The younger one was 58 maybe. Shorter. Shoulders hunched forward. Eyes that moved quick and nervous. He looked at her like she might be dangerous. "Mrs. Reeves," he said. His voice was quiet, uncertain. "I'm Owen." They sat on the porch. The older man, Benedict Owen's brother, brought coffee and then went back inside with a tact that suggested he'd done this before. Given Owen space to deal with difficult things, Claire pulled out the folder, set it on the small table between them. "Vincent Harlow came to Hawk Ridge 3 days ago," she said. "Told me you'd sold your third of the land. Told me it was just a matter of me signing to complete the sale." Owen's face went pale. He said the sale was done. Said everything was registered. Said I'd get paid once you signed. He lied. Claire opened the folder, pulled out Eleanor's documentation. The sale was never registered. The paperwork had irregularities. It was refused. Owen stared at the documents. His hands were shaking slightly. 8 months ago," Claire continued, "someone tried to file transfer papers claiming you'd sold, but the signature wasn't properly notarized. The terms violated the original registration. The county clerk rejected it. Vincent said..." Owen stopped, started again. He said everything was done. Legal. Just waiting on Garrett's widow to agree. "Vincent's been lying to you for 2 years." The words hung between them. Owen picked up the papers, read them slowly. When he finished, he set them down with a care that suggested he was afraid they might shatter. "Garrett knew," he said quietly. "Didn't he? Knew Vincent was lying to me?" "Yes. And he didn't tell me. He documented it, in case you needed proof later." Claire pulled out her phone, showed him the photographed journal pages. "He wrote everything down. Dates, conversations, what Vincent said, what you said, what really happened." Owen scrolled through the images. His face got smaller with each one. "I thought the sale was done," he whispered. "I've been waiting 2 years for money Vincent said was coming. Turned down work because I thought I'd have enough to retire. Borrowed against it. God, I've been so stupid. You weren't stupid. You were lied to. Same thing." His voice was bitter, self-directed. Claire waited. Let him process. Finally, Owen looked up. "Why are you here?" "Because Vincent still wants that land. Because the mining company's still interested. Because he'll keep pushing until one of us breaks." She paused. "Garrett's letter said you're not bad. Just afraid. That Vincent has something on him. Uses it." Owen's laugh was hollow. "Had. Past tense. Something from when we were 19. Stupid thing I did that Vincent covered for. Made me think I owed him. Held it over me for 40 years like a sword." "What was it?" He shook his head. "Doesn't matter now. Statute of limitations is long past. I just never realized I didn't have to be afraid anymore. Vincent kept that fear alive. Reminded me. Made sure I remembered what he could take away." The wind chimes sang their empty notes. "I signed that promise to sell because I was broke," Owen said. "Still am mostly. Vincent showed me numbers. Told me Garrett had agreed, Told me it was smart business. Told me I'd be a fool to pass it up. And you believed him. I wanted to believe him. That's different. Owen looked at her directly for the first time. You know what Garrett and I had in common. We both knew Vincent was dangerous, but Garrett had courage to say no. I didn't. Claire pulled out Garrett's letter, unfolded it, handed it across. He wrote this 6 years ago, left it with the county clerk. She gave it to me yesterday. Owen read in silence. When he finished, there were tears on his face he didn't bother wiping away. He trusted you, Owen said, even knowing Vincent might kill him for it, even knowing you'd end up here dealing with this mess. He trusted you to be stronger than me. He trusted me to find you, Claire corrected, to show you the truth, to give you a choice that wasn't based on Vincent's lies. What choice? Keep your third. Stand with me. Make Vincent the minority owner. Or sell it to him if you want. But sell it knowing the truth. Knowing you have power not because Vincent allows it, but because the law protects it. Owen folded the letter carefully, handed it back. Tell me about Garrett, he said. The Garrett you knew, not the one from 40 years ago. So Claire did. She told him about quiet mornings, about Garrett's habit of fixing things before they broke, about how he'd bring her coffee made exactly right without asking how she wanted it, about Benjamin, and how Garrett had held their son through the last terrible hours when there was nothing left to do but be present. She told him about the accident, the investigation that found nothing suspicious, the funeral where Vincent sent flowers but didn't come. And she told him about finding the cave, the gold, the journal, the photographs that showed 3 young men who'd been brothers before they were enemies. There's one of you, she said. You and Garrett and Vincent. 1989. You all have your arms around each other. You're smiling. Owen closed his eyes. I remember that day. We'd just filed the paperwork, made it official. Vincent brought a camera, said we needed to mark the moment. He opened his eyes. We were happy then, really happy, before money poisoned it. It doesn't have to stay poisoned, doesn't it? Owen's voice was tired. Vincent's not gonna stop. You know that, right? He'll find another way, another angle. He always does. Then we fight every angle. Claire leaned forward. Owen Garrett spent years refusing to sell, years documenting Vincent's pressure, years preparing for the day when Vincent might kill him to get what he wanted. He did all that because he believed some things are worth protecting, not the land itself. The promise you 3 made. The idea that brotherhood meant something. Brotherhood died a long time ago. Then honor the ghost of it. Owen sat back, looked out at his brother's farm, the fields going fallow for winter, the sky turning orange with sunset. I don't have Garrett's courage, he said finally. You don't need his courage. You need your own. Claire gathered the papers. I'm not asking you to be a hero. I'm asking you not to let Vincent win by default. The sale isn't legal. Never was. You don't owe him anything. And if I say no, if I tell Vincent I'm not selling him, then we have 2/3 solidarity. He can't force a sale. Can't pressure the mining company to act. He's stuck. He'll make it hell. Probably. Owen laughed. A real laugh this time. Surprised. You're not what I expected? What did you expect? Someone who'd sell in a heartbeat, take the money and run. Not someone who'd come all this way to find me. Garrett trusted me with this, Claire said simply. I'm not letting him down. The sun was almost gone. Benedict appeared in the doorway with a question in his posture. Owen stood, extended his hand to Claire. I won't sell, he said. Not to Vincent. Not the way he wants. If I ever do sell, it'll be my decision. Made with full information. Not because I was lied to. Claire shook his hand. His grip was firmer than she expected. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Vincent's going to be furious. And when Vincent's furious, people get hurt. I know. Do you... Owen's eyes were serious. Really know he's not just some businessman who plays hardball. He's someone who's been nursing a grudge for 20 years. Someone who maybe killed your husband. You understand what you're walking into? Yes. Owen studied her face. Whatever he saw there made him nod slowly. Okay then. We fight. Claire got back to Hawk Ridge 3 days later. The journey had eaten most of her small reserve of cash. Bus tickets. Food. The taxi ride back to Stone Creek from the terminal. But she had Owen's phone number. Had his promise. Had documentation proving the sale was fraudulent. Had something else, too. A sense of forward motion. Of pieces moving into position. Nathan Brewster had been pleased when she called from Ashford. 2/3 solidarity changes everything, he'd said. I'll prepare a formal notification to Vincent. Make it clear any future sale attempts will be opposed. Tracker was waiting at the trailhead. He appeared from the trees like he'd been tracking her arrival. Fell into step beside her as she climbed. The cabin looked exactly as she'd left it, untouched. But when she circled around to check the water line, the one that ran from the spring to the small tank Garrett had installed years ago, she found it cut. Clean cut. Not broken. Not damaged by weather or animals. Cut with a blade. Claire stood looking at the severed pipe. Felt something cold settle in her stomach. Vincent had been here. Or someone working for him. She checked the cabin. Nothing inside disturbed. The false wall still in place. But outside near the tree line she found tire tracks. Fresh. A day old, maybe 2. Tracker growled low. The sound he made for danger. That night, Claire slept with Garrett's hunting knife beside her sleeping bag. Tracker stayed at the door, ears forward, listening to sounds she couldn't hear. Morning came gray and cold. The first real cold of the season. Claire could see her breath inside the cabin. She was boiling water for coffee when she heard the vehicle. Tracker's growl intensified. He moved to the doorway, hackles raised. Claire stood. Put the knife in her belt. Waited. Vincent appeared 5 minutes later. Not alone this time. 2 men with him. Younger. Wearing reflective vests like they were official somehow. Carrying surveying equipment. Mrs. Reeves. Vincent's smile was colder than the morning. We need to conduct a geological survey. That's our right as co-owners. Claire stepped into the doorway, Tracker beside her. No, she said. I'm sorry. No survey. Not without written consent from all 3 owners. I checked with my lawyer. You need unanimous permission to conduct commercial activity on common property. Vincent's smile thinned. This is a routine assessment. This is an attempt to gather data for a mining company. That's commercial, and I'm refusing permission. One of the men with Vincent shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable. Vincent's eyes hardened. You're making this difficult unnecessarily. I'm following the law. The law. Vincent stepped closer. Tracker's growl got louder. Let me explain something about the law, Mrs. Reeves. It's expensive, drawn out, exhausting. Are you prepared for that? For lawyers and court dates and depositions for years of fighting? If that's what it takes, you'll lose. Maybe, but you'll spend a fortune finding out. Vincent's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to resistance. Certainly not from someone he'd mentally categorized as weak, as beatable. Owens already signed his agreement, Vincent said. Did he tell you that 2 years ago? Legally binding promise to sell. All I need is your signature. Owens' agreement was never properly registered. It's not legally binding. And Owens decided he's not selling. I spoke to him 3 days ago. The silence stretched, hung between them like a wire pulled taut. You went to Georgia, Vincent said quietly. I did. You have no idea what you're interfering with. I know exactly what I'm interfering with. A fraud. A 20-year campaign of pressure and lies, and possibly murder. The word hung in the cold air. Vincent's face changed. Something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. Careful, he said softly. Accusations like that have consequences. So do cutting water lines. So do threatening widows. So do killing men who won't sell what you want to buy. Your husband died in an accident. Did he? The investigation said so. Investigations can be wrong. Vincent took another step forward. Tracker's growl turned into something close to a snarl. Control your dog, Vincent said. He's doing exactly what he should do, protecting me from threats. I'm not threatening you. Then leave. Take your surveyors. Come back when you have proper legal authorization, which will be never, since I'll never sign it. For a long moment, Vincent just stared at her, calculating, reassessing. Then he smiled again. But this smile was different, uglier. You know what the problem with people like you is, he said. You think being right matters. You think if you stand firm enough, the world will bend to accommodate your principles. He shook his head. It doesn't work that way. The world breaks people like you. Slowly. Methodically. Until you're too tired to keep fighting. We'll see. Vincent turned to leave. Paused. I knew Garrett for 40 years. Watched him make the same mistake you're making now. Confusing stubbornness for strength. It got him killed. Are you confessing to something? I'm stating a fact. Stubborn people have accidents. Mountains are dangerous places. Things happen. He walked away. The two surveyors followed relief evident in their hurried steps. Claire watched until they disappeared down the trail. Heard a vehicle start. Drive away. Only then did she let herself shake. Tracker pressed against her leg. Solid. Real. Reminding her she wasn't alone. That night, she couldn't sleep, kept listening for sounds that didn't belong. Footsteps, voices, the crackle of fire. At 3 in the morning, she gave up, took the flashlight and the map, studied the marks Garrett had made, the X at the top of the ridge. She hadn't gone there yet, hadn't climbed to the peak, but something told her she needed to. Dawn came slowly. Claire made coffee with the last of her water. She'd have to rig something to collect from the spring directly until she could repair the line. She packed light, water, food, Garrett's knife, the journal because she wasn't leaving it hidden anymore. Told Tracker, stay, guard. The dog settled at the cabin door, watching, alert. The trail to the ridgetop was steep, harder than the main trail, less used. Garrett must have come up here alone, often enough to maintain it, but not often enough that others followed. It took Claire 2 hours. Her knee screamed, her lungs burned, but she kept climbing. The summit wasn't dramatic, just a leveling off where the mountains stopped rising and started falling on the other side. Trees thinned here, exposed rock, wind that cut through her jacket. And at the highest point, a cairn, stones stacked carefully, deliberately. The kind of marker that meant something. Claire circled it slowly, found what she was looking for on the north face. Carved into stone, GR plus VH plus OS, 1989, Garrett Reeves, Vincent Harlow, Owen Steele. Below the initials, more Carving Brothers, forever. The promise made before the promise was broken. Claire knelt, ran her fingers over the letters. Imagine 3 young men standing here, marking their claim, their dream, their bond. Before money, before betrayal, before death. There was something wedged between the stones at the cairn's base. A metal box, sealed with silicone to keep water out. Claire pried it loose, opened it. Inside, another photograph. The 3 of them again, but older. Maybe 10 years after the first one. Still smiling, but the smiles were different. More strained. And underneath the photo, a cassette tape. The kind people used to record on before everything went digital. On the tape's label, Garrett's handwriting, Vincent. 2006. Insurance. Claire's hands weren't steady. She put the tape in her jacket pocket, closed the box, left it where she'd found it, stood at the summit and looked out over the valley. Stone Creek was invisible from here, but she could see the next ridge, and the next. Mountains rolling away like frozen waves. This was what Garrett had protected. Not the land itself, the idea of it, the memory of brotherhood, the hope that something could stay pure even when the world tried to corrupt it. She stayed there until the sun was high, until she'd memorized the view, until she understood what Garrett meant about not wanting to leave once you understood. Then she climbed back down to the cabin where Tracker waited, and the fight was just beginning. That night, she called Nathan Brewster from the payphone in Stone Creek, told him about Vincent's visit, about the surveyors, about the threat disguised as observation. "File a police report," Nathan said. "Document everything, even the cut water line. Will it help?" "It establishes a pattern." If Vincent escalates, we have evidence of prior harassment. Claire made the report to Sheriff Thompson the next morning. He listened, wrote things down, his face skeptical but professional. Hard to prove who cut that line, he said. Could be anyone. Could be animals. Animals don't cut with blades. True enough. He closed his notebook. But without witnesses, without evidence, it's just property damage. Misdemeanor at best. What about the threats? He didn't threaten you directly. Said mountains are dangerous. That's an observation, not a threat, legally speaking. Claire left the sheriff's office knowing she was on her own. The law would protect her on paper. But out there on the mountain, paper didn't matter. She spent the afternoon at the hardware store in town. Bought new pipe for the water line. Heavy chain for the cabin door. A better lock. Batteries for the flashlight. Henry Tucker, the store owner, rang up her purchases without comment. Then added a canister of pepper spray. No charge, he said. Consider it a welcome to Stone Creek gift. Claire looked at him. He looked back. 60 years old. Steady hands. The kind of man who didn't waste words. Thank you, she said. He nodded once. Your husband was a good customer. Came in here for years. Always knew exactly what he needed. Didn't waste time. You knew him. Knew of him. He was private, but good. The kind you could trust. Henry paused. Vincent Harlow, on the other hand, he's the kind you watch carefully. It wasn't much, but it was something. A small alignment in her favor. A reminder that not everyone had sold their principles. That night, Claire sat in the cabin with the cassette tape on her lap and no way to play it. She'd need to find a tape player. An old one. The kind nobody used anymore. Tomorrow. She'd figure it out tomorrow. Tonight, she reinforced the door. Fixed the water line with her new pipe and some ingenuity. Set up her sleeping bag with sightlines to both the door and the window. Tracker slept across the threshold. His breathing steady. Outside, the mountains settled into its night rhythms. Wind. Water. Small animals moving through darkness. And somewhere out there, Vincent Harlow was planning his next move. Claire could feel it like pressure before a storm. The air getting heavier. The silence getting fuller. She lay in the dark and thought about Garrett's letter. About his trust. About the choice he'd given her. Fight or surrender. She'd already made her choice. Now she just had to be strong enough to keep making it. Day after day. Decision after decision. Until Vincent gave up or she did. And Claire didn't give up. She'd learned that lesson at Benjamin's bedside. Learned it at Garrett's funeral. Learned it every morning she woke up and chose to keep breathing, even when breathing hurt. This was just another version of that choice. Stay. Fight. Protect what Garrett had protected. Keep the promise. Outside, an owl called. Tracker's ear twitched, but he didn't move. The mountain kept watch and kept. And Claire, daughter of loss, widow of sacrifice, keeper of promises she'd never asked to keep, closed her eyes and held on. Ruth Porter had a grandson named Wyatt who was 17 and angry at the world in the way teenagers get when life doesn't match their expectations. Claire met him at the farmer's market 3 weeks after her trip to Georgia. He was hauling crates of vegetables for his grandmother, with the kind of resentment that made each movement a small protest. Ruth saw Claire looking. "Boy needs purpose," she said quietly. "Thinks he's going to quit school. Thinks there's nothing here for him." Claire thought about Benjamin at 17, what he would have been, who he would have become. "I could use help," she heard herself say. "At the cabin, rebuilding the water system. Garden work when spring comes, pays not much, but it's something." Ruth's eyes sharpened. "You sure?" "I need someone who can work hard, who can learn." "Wyatt can do both, when he decides to." Ruth called over to the boy. "Come here." The arrangement was made in 5 minutes. Wyatt would come up to Hawk Ridge 3 days a week. Claire would teach him practical skills, pay him what she could, give him something to do that wasn't school or anger or the slow suffocation of a small town with no visible future. "Don't coddle him," Ruth said as Wyatt went back to the crates. "He needs to learn that work has consequences, that showing up matters." Claire nodded. She understood consequences. The cassette tape sat in her pack like a bomb waiting to be diffused. She'd found a tape player finally. Henry Tucker had one in the back of his store, dusty and ancient, but functional. Sold it to her for $5 with a look that said he knew what she was carrying but wouldn't ask. Claire didn't play the tape in town. Didn't play it at the cabin where walls were thin and sounds carried. She waited until she was back at the cairn at the summit. Just her and Tracker, and the wind that made listening difficult, but also made being overheard impossible. The tape clicked as she pressed play. Static. Then Garrett's voice, younger, tenser. "This is insurance," he said into the recorder. "In case something happens. In case Vincent does what I think he's gonna do." A pause. Sound of wind. Same wind Claire was hearing now, just 20 years earlier. Then another voice. Vincent's. Angry. Loud enough to carry. "You sign the goddamn papers, or I swear to God, Garrett, you'll regret it." Garrett's voice calmer. "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise. You think you can block this forever. You think Owen's going to keep backing you. I know things about Owen. Things that would destroy him. And you've got a family now. Wife, kid. Lot of things that can go wrong when someone's not being careful. Are you threatening my son?" "I'm explaining reality. Accidents happen. Houses catch fire. Cars go off roads. Kids get sick. You want to risk all that over some stupid principle." Silence. Then Garrett's voice, very quiet. "This conversation is over. And if anything happens to my family, Vincent, I'll make sure everyone knows why. Who's going to believe you? You're paranoid, unstable. Everyone knows you've been acting strange since the kid was born. Get off my mountain." "Your mountain?" Vincent laughed. Ugly sound. "It's mine too, remember? And I'm not going anywhere until you understand that you can't win this." Footsteps, movement. The recording quality degraded. But Vincent's voice came through clear. "Sign or suffer. Your choice." Then the tape ended. Just wind and static and silence. Claire sat with the player in her lap. The mountains stretched around her, indifferent to human drama. Ancient and patient, and utterly unmoved by threats made 20 years ago. But she'd heard it. Vincent threatening Garrett, threatening Benjamin, threatening her though she hadn't known it at the time. Evidence. Real evidence. She called Nathan Brewster from the payphone that evening. "I found something," she said. "A recording. Vincent threatening Garrett. Specifically. Clearly." Nathan was quiet for a long moment. "When was it made?" 2006. The label says 2006. "And you have the original tape?" "Yes." "Don't let it out of your sight. That's evidence of witness intimidation at minimum. Possibly grounds to reopen the investigation into your husband's death. Can we use it legally? Depends on the state's recording consent laws. But even if it's not admissible in court, it's leverage. Vincent won't want that tape made public. Won't want people to know he threatened a man who later died suspiciously." Claire thought about that. About leverage. About the difference between legal victory and practical victory. What do? We inform Vincent's lawyer that we have documentation of harassment spanning 2 decades. That we have witness testimony from Owen Steele. That we have evidence suggesting Mr. Harlow's involvement in illegal intimidation tactics. We let him know that any further harassment will result in both criminal and civil action. Will that stop him? It'll make him recalculate. Men like Vincent respond to risk assessment. Right now he sees you as low risk. We need to change that math. The letter from Nathan's office went out the next day. Formal. Legal. Laying out the case point by point. 2 days later, Vincent's response arrived. He was suing for partition of the property, claiming that the 3-way ownership was untenable, that the land needed to be sold and the proceeds divided. Nathan called that evening. It's a desperation move. He can't force a sale, so he's trying to force a court-ordered division. But it's expensive and time-consuming, and the outcome is uncertain. He's hoping you'll settle rather than fight. I won't settle. Then we fight. But Claire understands what this means. Depositions, court appearances, legal fees. This could take years. I don't care. And there's something else. I did some research into your husband's accident. Requested the police file. There are inconsistencies. Claire's hand tightened on the phone. What kind of inconsistencies? The brake line failure was attributed to corrosion, but the mechanic's notes mentioned the cut looked clean in places, sharper than normal wear. It was dismissed as the line breaking in sections, but someone looking for evidence of tampering might see it differently. Can we prove it? Not after 5 years. The vehicle was scrapped. The physical evidence is gone, but we can request the case be reviewed, especially with the tape as context. Claire closed her eyes, saw Garrett's face, heard his voice on the recording, calm even in the face of threats. Do it, she said. Request the review. This will make Vincent very angry. Good. Owen called the next morning. His voice shook. Vincent came to the farm last night. Benedict had to ask him to leave. I've never seen him like that. Furious. Said we were making a mistake. Said he'd make us both regret it. What exactly did he say? That the lawsuit was just the beginning. That he had resources we couldn't imagine. That fighting him was futile. Owen paused. Claire, he knows about the tape. How? I don't know. But he mentioned recordings. Said if we tried to use them, he'd prove they were fabricated. Said he has lawyers who could destroy us. He's bluffing. Maybe. But he's also dangerous. Benedict wants me to drop this. Sell my third to Vincent. Take whatever money he offers and walk away. What do you want? Silence on the line, long enough that Claire thought they'd been disconnected. Then Owen spoke. Garrett stood up to him for 20 years. Died for it, probably. You've stood up to him for 3 months, and he's already threatening lawsuits. If we quit now, everything Garrett did was for nothing. So we don't quit. No, Owen said, his voice firmer now. We don't quit. The lawsuit moved forward, slowly. The legal system grinding with its characteristic indifference to urgency. Depositions were scheduled. Discovery began. Nathan filed countermotions arguing the land was not suitable for partition, that the original agreement protected against forced sale. And Claire went back to the mountain. Wyatt started coming 3 times a week like they'd agreed. At first he was sullen, resentful of instruction, moving through tasks with minimal effort. But the mountain had a way of stripping pretense. You couldn't half do the work. Either the water line got fixed properly or it leaked. Either the firewood was stacked right or it fell. Either you learned or you failed. After 2 weeks, Wyatt started asking questions. "Why'd you come here?" he said one afternoon while they were clearing brush. City people usually want to leave places like this, not stay. Claire thought about how to answer. Settled on truth. "I inherited a promise," she said, "from my husband. He protected this place for 20 years. Now, it's my turn." "From what?" "From people who think everything has a price." Wyatt was quiet for a while. Then, "My dad thinks I should sell out. Move to a city. Get a job in IT or something. Says there's nothing here. Is he wrong?" "I don't know." Wyatt dropped an armful of branches. "Maybe there's nothing anywhere. Maybe it doesn't matter where you are." "It matters," Claire said. "Place matters. What you protect matters. Who you become while protecting it matters." "You sound like my grandmother." "Your grandmother's smart." The depositions were brutal. Vincent's lawyers were expensive, polished. They asked Claire about her marriage, about Garrett's mental state, about whether he'd been paranoid, delusional, whether his obsession with the land had damaged their relationship. They asked about Benjamin, about whether losing a child had affected her judgment, made her cling to the cabin as a replacement for what she'd lost. Nathan objected when he could, but the questions kept coming, designed to paint her as unstable, grief-stricken, incapable of rational decision-making about property. Claire answered each one calmly, precisely, with the control she learned at Benjamin's bedside when the world was ending and only composure kept her standing. Owen's deposition was harder. Vincent's lawyers hammered him about the promise to sell, about money he owed, about whether he was being manipulated by Claire. But Owen held firm, stated clearly that Vincent had lied about the sale being complete, that the harassment was documented, that he was refusing to sell based on principle, not manipulation. After in the parking lot, Owen looked drained. "I hate this," he said. "The questions, the implications, having to defend choices that should be obvious. It'll be over eventually. Will it, or will Vincent just keep finding new ways to make this hell? Claire didn't have an answer for that. The break came from an unexpected direction. Sheriff Thompson called on a Tuesday morning in late November. His voice was different, more careful, less skeptical. "Mrs. Reeves, I've been reviewing your husband's accident file. At the request of the state police, they're taking another look at the brake line failure." Claire's heart stuttered. And they found something. Photos from the original scene. Someone marked them as potential evidence of tampering, but it was never followed up. With the context you provided, the history of threats, they're reopening the investigation. What does that mean? Means Vincent Harlow is going to be questioned. Means his alibi for that night is going to be checked. Means this isn't just about property anymore. Claire sat down. Her legs wouldn't hold her. "Thank you," she managed. "Don't thank me yet. Investigation doesn't mean conviction. Doesn't even mean charges. But it means someone's finally taking your concerns seriously." The news hit Stone Creek like a thunderclap. Henry Tucker mentioned it when Claire came in for supplies. His tone neutral, but his eyes sharp with interest. Ruth Porter brought it up at the market. "Heard the sheriff's looking into Garrett's death again." That true? Claire confirmed it was. Watched the information ripple outward through the small community. And watched Vincent's position begin to crack. The mining company that had been interested in Hawk Ridge quietly withdrew their offer. Nathan got the notification a week after the investigation went public. "They don't want the publicity," he explained. "Don't want to be associated with a potential murder case. Corporate policy." So Vincent loses his buyer. His primary buyer, yes. He'd have to find someone else. Someone willing to deal with a property under legal dispute and criminal investigation. That's not an easy sell. Without the mining company's interest, Vincent's leverage evaporated. The land was just land again. Valuable, but not worth the fight he'd been waging. His lawsuit for partition stalled. His lawyers requested delays. The aggressive timeline they'd been pushing suddenly became cautious foot-dragging. Nathan smiled when he told Claire. He's recalculating, deciding whether this is worth it. And my guess is he decides it's not. He'll try to save face. Try to sell his third to someone else. Cut his losses and move on. Just like that. Men like Vincent are pragmatists. When the math stops working, they find a different game. But Claire knew it wouldn't be quite that simple. Vincent was proud, stubborn. Had spent 20 years trying to control this land. He'd make one more move. She could feel it. It came in early December. Claire was at the cabin with Wyatt showing him how to reinforce the structure for winter when Tracker went rigid. Not his warning growl. Something else. A readiness that meant imminent threat. Vincent appeared at the tree line. Alone this time. No surveyors. No lawyers. Just him. "Stay here," Claire told Wyatt. Then to Tracker, guard him. She walked out to meet Vincent at the boulder line. The boundary he'd crossed before. The line that meant something to the dog, if not to the man. Vincent looked older, thinner. The smooth confidence worn down to something harder and more desperate. "This could have been easy," he said without preamble. "Could have been clean. Everyone benefits. Instead, you've made it impossible. I didn't make anything impossible. I just refused to sell. You destroyed a 20-year plan. You allied with Owen. You poisoned the mining company against me. You got the police to open an investigation based on lies and paranoid recordings. The recordings weren't paranoid. They were evidence of a private conversation, a heated discussion between old friends. You threatened to hurt my family. I was frustrated. I said things I didn't mean. That doesn't make me a murderer. Vincent's voice cracked slightly. Garrett's death was an accident. Ice on a mountain road. Bad luck. Nothing more. The police don't think so. The police are chasing ghosts because you gave them a ghost story. He stepped forward. Tracker growled. Vincent ignored him. I'm offering you one last chance, Claire. Sell me your third. Fair price. No games. Let me buy out Owen, too. Walk away from this with enough money to start over somewhere else. No. Why? The word exploded out of him. Why are you so determined to ruin this? It's just land. Just dirt and rocks and trees. It doesn't mean anything. It meant something to Garrett. Garrett's dead. And you killed him. Silence crashed between them. Vincent's face went white, then red. That's slander. It's truth. You threatened him, pressured him, and when he wouldn't break, you cut his brake line and sent him off a mountain road. You can't prove that. Maybe not. But the investigation will determine that. And everyone in this county will know you were questioned. Will know there was enough evidence to reopen the case. Your reputation is already damaged. How much more damage do you want? Vincent stared at her, really looked at her for the first time, saw something he hadn't expected. You're like him, he said quietly. Same stubbornness, same refusal to see reason. I should have known. You should have. This won't end the way you think, even if I walk away, even if the investigation clears me. You're stuck with worthless land and legal bills and nothing to show for it. I'm stuck with a promise kept. That's enough. Vincent laughed. Bitter. Defeated. Garrett would be proud. For whatever that's worth. He turned to leave. Stopped. Looked back. I loved him once, he said. Before the money. Before everything went wrong. We were brothers. Really brothers. And I destroyed that because I couldn't let go of a number on a piece of paper. That's the thing you don't understand yet. The cost isn't just the land. It's everything you lose fighting for it. Then he walked down the trail, and Claire never saw him again. The resolution came slowly, piece by piece. Vincent's third of the land went up for sale. Owen, with a loan from his brother and some careful negotiation, bought it. Not for development, not for mining, just to own, to protect. Benedict thinks I'm crazy, Owen told Claire when the sale finalized. Borrowing money to buy land I'll never use. But Garrett would have understood. Garrett would have been grateful. No, he'd have expected it. That's different. Owen smiled slightly. I'm not the man I was when we were 20. But maybe I can be the man he thought I could become. The police investigation concluded without charges. Insufficient evidence. Too much time passed. The break line photos were suggestive but not conclusive, but the shadow remained. Everyone in Stone Creek knew Vincent Harlow had been questioned, knew there were doubts about Garrett's accident, knew that money and power hadn't been enough to stop the questions. That was a different kind of justice, imperfect but real. Nathan Brewster called it a victory. You kept the land. Vincent's out. The legal threats are over. That's as good as it gets in the real world. Claire thought about Garrett, about promises, about the long fight he'd waged alone. It's enough, she said. Spring came to Hawk Ridge the way it always came, slowly, reluctantly. Ice melting into mud before the first green appeared. Claire had been on the mountain for 7 months. The cabin was rebuilt now, properly. With Wyatt's help and Owen's occasional visits and supplies bought with the gold Garrett had hidden. The water system worked. The roof didn't leak. The walls were solid. She'd built a garden in the space where the soil ran deep, planted according to Garrett's notes. Vegetables that could handle the altitude. Herbs that grew tough in mountain air. Tracker had filled out. No longer the half-wild thing she'd first encountered. Still vigilant, still watchful, but settled. Home. Wyatt came up 3 days a week still. But he wasn't angry anymore. Or if he was, he'd learned to channel it into work, into learning, into becoming someone who could fix things instead of just breaking them. My dad doesn't understand, he said one afternoon while they were repairing fence line. Why I'd rather be here than in school. Why I care about this place. Do you care? Wyatt was quiet. Then, yeah, I do. It's not about the land. It's about, I don't know, doing something that matters. Building something that lasts. Claire understood. She'd felt the same way. On a morning in late April, Owen drove up the access road as far as it went and hiked the rest of the way. Brought coffee and a thermos and news. Vincent sold his house in town, Owen said. Moving somewhere south. Florida, I heard. Starting over. Good for him. You don't hate him. Claire thought about that. About Vincent at 20. Vincent at 40. Vincent now. The long deterioration from brotherhood to bitterness. I hate what he became, she said. Not what he was. Owen nodded. Looked out at the valley. We should mark it. The anniversary. Garrett died in December. A year ago this past winter. Should be something to remember him by. They planned it together. Not a gravestone. Garrett was buried in the town cemetery next to Benjamin. But a marker. A cairn like the one at the summit. A testament. They built it over 3 days. Claire and Owen and Wyatt, hauling stones, stacking them carefully, creating something permanent. When it was finished, Owen produced a metal plaque. Simple, unadorned. Hawk Ridge Conservation Land, protected in honor of Garrett Reeves, 1966 to 2023, who kept his word. They mounted it on a post near the cabin, where anyone who climbed to Hawk Ridge would see it, would know this land was protected, would understand that some things mattered more than profit. At the dedication, Owen spoke first. Garrett was my friend before he was anything else, before we were partners. before we fought, before everything got complicated. He was just a guy who saw a mountain and wanted to protect it. That's who I want to remember. That's who this honors. Wyatt went next. He hadn't known Garrett, but he'd learned from Garrett's notes, from the journal, from the choices made decades before he was born. My grandmother says every generation has to decide what's worth keeping, what's worth fighting for. Mr. Reeves decided this place was worth it. Mrs. Reeves kept that decision alive. That matters. It matters that people still make those choices. Then Claire. She stood in front of the plaque with the mountain behind her and the valley below, and Tracker at her feet. Garrett left me this place because he knew I'd fight for it. Not because I'm strong, not because I'm brave, but because I don't quit. That's all this was. Not quitting, not giving up when it got hard, not selling out when it would have been easier. She paused. He did that for 20 years. I did it for 7 months. And whoever comes after us will do it for however long they need to. That's the promise. That's what this marker means. This land stays protected forever. They stood together in silence. 3 people who'd become something like family through shared struggle, shared purpose. Then Owen and Wyatt hiked back down. Claire stayed. That night, alone in the cabin with Tracker asleep by the door, she pulled out paper and pen, started writing. Dear Benjamin, you would have been 12 now, almost 13. The age where boys become something else. Not quite men yet, but not children anymore. I think about you every day. What you'd look like, what you'd sound like. Whether you'd love this mountain or hate it. Whether you'd understand why your dad protected it. Why I'm protecting it now. Your dad left something for me here. Not just land. Not just gold or papers or evidence. He left me a purpose. A reason to keep going when everything else felt impossible. After you died, I didn't think I had any purpose left. Thought maybe I'd just drift through whatever years remained. Surviving but not living. The mountain changed that. Or maybe I changed it. I'm still not sure. But I know this, the work I do here matters. The garden I'm planting. The cabin I'm rebuilding. The promise I'm keeping. All of it matters because it's about more than just me. It's about your dad's memory. About brotherhood that broke but shouldn't have. About the idea that some things are worth protecting, even when protecting them costs everything. You're not here to see it. I wish you were. I wish I could show you the view from the summit. The way the valley looks at dawn. The sound the wind makes through the pines. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the things we do for people who aren't here anymore are the things that matter most. The choices we make because they would have mattered to them. The promises we keep because they believed we could. Your dad believed I could keep this promise. I'm keeping it. Not perfectly. Not without struggle. But I'm keeping it. And every time I plant something that will outlive me, every time I teach Wyatt something worth knowing, every time I look at this land and choose again to protect it, I'm keeping you alive too. Both of you. The people we love don't really die. as long as we honor what they would have valued, as long as we live in ways that would have made them proud. I think you'd be proud of this, Benjamin. I think you'd understand. Your dad did. I love you. Always. Mom. Claire folded the letter, put it in the journal next to Garrett's last entry. A conversation across death, across time, across all the impossible distances that separated them. Then she closed the journal and set it on the shelf where it belonged. Outside, the April moon was full. Silver light turned the clearing bright as day. Tracker stirred, lifted his head, looked at her with those amber eyes that saw more than most. "Come on," Claire said. "Let's check the perimeter." They walked together through the moonlit clearing, around the cabin, past the garden plot, to the boulder line where Vincent had stood, where threats had been made and rejected. The valley spread below, Stone Creek invisible in the darkness, but knowing it was there, knowing people were living their lives in that small town, continuing, persisting, like she was persisting. The cold air tasted clean, sharp, real in a way that city air never managed. Claire stood at the edge of her world and looked out at everything she'd fought for, everything she'd kept. Not perfect, not without cost, but kept. Tracker pressed against her leg, warm, solid, present. Garrett was right, she said into the darkness, to the mountain, to the ghost of the man who'd understood her better than she understood herself. Once you understand this place, you don't want to leave. The mountain didn't answer. It didn't need to. Some truths were self-evident. Some promises kept themselves once you decided they were worth keeping. Claire turned back toward the cabin, toward the light burning in the window, toward home. Behind her, the valley breathed. The mountains stood. The stars turned in their ancient patterns. And in the morning, she'd wake up and make coffee and work in the garden and teach Wyatt something new and live another day in the life she'd chosen. Not the life she'd planned. Not the life she'd imagined when she was young and believed the future was something you could control. But her life, earned through loss, forged through struggle, built stone by stone, decision by decision, day by day. The life of someone who'd inherited a promise and discovered that keeping it made her into someone she'd never expected to become. Someone strong enough to stand alone. Someone stubborn enough to refuse defeat. Someone who understood finally that the things worth having were always the things you had to fight for. And that fighting when you fought for the right reasons wasn't a burden. It was a privilege. Claire closed the cabin door behind her, locked it, banked the fire, settled into her sleeping bag with Tracker's weight against her feet. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. More work, more weather, more small victories and small defeats. But tonight she had this. The cabin that was shelter and fortress both. The mountain that was inheritance and home. The promise that was burden and gift. The silence that wasn't empty but full. Full of everything she'd lost and everything she'd found and everything she was still becoming. The mountain kept watch through the night. Patient, ancient, unmoved by human drama. And Claire Miller Abbott Reeves, 43 years old, widow, mother of ghosts, keeper of promises, slept the sleep of someone who'd finally found the place she belonged. Not because it was easy, because it was hers.